Welcome to MetaPod, the podcast where we discuss operational execs and organizations that make and move stuff, and our common headaches, digital transformation, the forever labor shortage, and doing more with less. And now, the host of MetaPod, Ron Crabtree.
It's Ron Crabtree here, back with another episode of MetaPod, where we talk with thought leaders from around the world around those three common challenges that industrials, manufacturing, organizations involved with tangible goods and like face, and it's the forever labor shortage, digital transformation, digitization of work, and in that conversation of late certainly is AI, artificial intelligence, and how we get the ROI out of AI, so we can make a little rhyme out of that. And then finally, just needing to do more with less people, resources, space, logistics, the lean thinking kind of way of going after things for business management just seem to be all kind of tied together. And really pleased to have with me here Anna Barnhill, and she's going to talk about herself here in a minute. She's the author of a pretty cool book that came out recently, getting some of the big challenges organizations face around getting the value out of their investments in technology. So I think you really enjoy listening to Anna here. If you're interested in technology, but it seems like your teams are holding you back, they're being a little resistant, right? You're the chief operating officer, you're the VP of operations and engineering leader. You think they're the real bottleneck here, but you're really not sure what to do about it. So I think Anna's going to give us some really good ideas around how we gauge and understand what the gaps can be and how to measure that, and then what to do. So Anna, tell us a little bit about you.
Absolutely. Well, first, excited to have this conversation, Ron. And I think something that might be interesting to your audience, my background is actually in quality and project management. So I'm a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and I started my career around quality audits, around creating quality management systems, and then transitioning into consulting and helping other companies deploy their processes or drive their transformations. And something that I have observed and learned early on, you can have the right strategy, you can have the right process in place, but your initiative can fail miserably. And I became very curious, what is causing it? What's the root cause? And the more I observed and researched, I find something that is so interesting. It is not technology, it is not tools, it is people's side of change. It is actually leadership and its ability of every leader to first embrace change themselves and then lead their people through that change. That was fascinating. And literally, I shifted my career trajectory towards the human side of change. So now I'm organizational psychologist. I'm a fellow at Harvard McLean Hospital. So I'm trying to combine the applied neuroscience, organizational psychology, and right now this aspect of human AI collaboration in how we can lead effectively in this new era of work, because we have never experienced anything like this before.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And, I get to talk with a lot of smart people that are grappling with, how do we get the value out of technology? And it seems like there's a high level of agreement around if we fail to engage people properly, get them involved in the process, bringing them along, look out. This is going to be a difficult conversation later when you're like, why are we not embracing? Why are we not adopting? Why are we not pivoting? Take advantage of technologies and other necessary changes we need to make. And I think you recently were the author of a book. Could you tell us a bit about the book and what the purpose of your book is about?
Absolutely, yes. So the book is called Leader Wired, and it's literally an AI era leadership playbook that can equip every person in a people leadership role with the right mindsets, with the right way to think about things. Because right now we need to shift from linear thinking to exponential. We need to start thinking differently, evaluating things differently, and it gives you the framework, it gives you the right questions, the diagnostics to deploy to feel confident in this uncertainty So you can lead yourself, you can lead your team, and then you can scale it at cultural level, at organizational level.
Okay, good job on that. So now I'm interested in a diagnostic, so my audience, is made up of a wide variety of folks, different, walks of life, executives in industry, consultants, individual contributors at all levels. And this whole thing is moving super fast. And then the horror story is 70 to 80% failure rates in initiatives. I would like to know what your diagnostic are. I may not be really, savvy about all this, but I want to walk down the hall and ask questions. What are the questions I should be asking? What are the three areas you would offer there's a diagnostic? Right. Here's things that you should be looking at. These are the questions you should be asking. This is how you determine how big the gap may be or the amount of risk we face as an organization. So we're going to start with that. What would you say are those three areas, and what's your advice around diagnosis, right? How do you measure that? What are the questions I'm asking? What's the data? What's the evidence that we have a gap?
Great question. Well, first, I will start with saying that the most effective companies right now, they do not have necessarily the best technology. They have best led teams. So when it comes to diagnostic, I would bring it away from technology and process, and I want to start with leadership, personal
Okay.
leadership, and what you observe in your teams. Because right now, there is a big leadership identity gap. The old playbook was built for the old world. That world is no longer existing. Everything is moving fast. So I will first ask, as a leader, one question for myself. What are my best strengths? Something that I'm proud of, something that got me to this level of success. Within that, we will identify the strength of this person, of this individual. And what we then need to look at the shadow side of every strength. Because I can give you an example. So if your
I'm,
strength
I'm sorry.
is,
I'm sorry. You said shadow side. What do you mean by shadow side?
yeah, yeah. So think
Define
about it. It's
define that
almost
for
like,
me.
yeah, something good, if it becomes too much or it becomes unintentional, it could become a liability.
Hmm. Okay.
So anything in excess can become something that is no longer good for us. So that's what you can see with strength. Having all the answers and having certainty could be a strength. If we flip the coin, and this is what I call the shadow side, we can see that right now with AI, your expertise has a shelf life. You
Hmm.
cannot know all the possible answers anymore. So if you start seeing your people going to ChatGPT to ask a question, not you, it can create a little bit of identity crisis. Who am I right now if my strength is basically being commoditized? So that's what I mean by the shadow side. That's why the diagnostic question is so helpful, because it's easy to say, what are you proud of as a leader? You will come up with something right away. Now you identify the strength. And now you can ask yourself, in which way this strength can now cause a liability and slow my team down?
So this is pretty interesting. So I'd like you to play with me here. And again, I'm trying to watch out for my audience here with respect to what is Anna suggesting I go do, right? What's she suggesting I go look at? How am I going to gauge we have a gap? So let's unpack that just a little bit more. I'm walking down the hall. What kind of questions am I going to ask, and what am I looking for to
Mhm.
suggest to me what we've got a challenge here? Give me an
Yeah.
example of a question I would ask, and what I'm looking for and why I'm looking for that.
hmm So now, when we transition from ourselves to the people that we lead, one of the good diagnostic questions would be, can people that work for you actually articulate what is their leadership role right now and responsibility as a leader now that AI is actually handling a lot of technical tasks, a lot of things that leaders used to do, they became really good at it. But right now, we're introducing this new technology to make things more efficient and effective. Do they have clarity around redefining what their role looks like and what the success in this role looks like? If your people
So,
don't know the answer, identity crisis is brewing.
yeah, so unpack that just a little more. What's the kind of answer I'm getting to suggest, uh-oh, we have a challenge, right? We ask that question, and what's the answer that we're getting back that suggests we have a gap here? This is the problem.
Mhm.
Can you give me an
Well,
example?
first one would be I don't know, and blank look on their face, the look of confusion, right? We want to look at their body language. If they're like, what are you talking about? Okay, we need to have some conversations about helping them shift how they see their role and helping them find value in something that is maybe AI cannot do and is uniquely human, whether it's strategy, higher level thinking, maybe creativity, innovation, finding better ways to collaborate with each other. But if they say, I don't know, they have confused look, or they basically telling you things that sound like old playbook, anything that has a flavor of command and control, where they still believe they have control all inputs and outputs, they're solely responsible for making all the decision without involving their team. All those are red flags that they're operating on the old playbook, and it's no longer effective.
All right, cool. So that's that leadership identity gap you're talking about with respect to leadership of the future identity and what it needs to be in this new world. So that's pretty interesting. The next one you had here was you called it the psychological safety deficit. Tell us more about that. What's behind that, and how do I determine if I have a challenge there?
Yes. Yeah. Well, psychological safety is a foundation of any change. In our case, right now, it's AI change, but any change management initiatives, we always want to understand if our culture creates environment for people to feel safe and comfortable enough to be honest, to bring problems forward, to say, I don't know, to challenge their boss and say, I think I disagree here with you. I have a different opinion. Let me share it with you. And right now, what we're seeing, there's still quite a bit of a deficit. And AI actually amplifies it. So I
Mm.
like to see AI as yes, it's a software, it's a tool, but it's also an amplifier. So if your culture right now has leadership at the helm that has that ability to create that safe environment, they have that exponential thinking, they can lead themselves in uncertainty and help their people navigate uncertainty. AI will actually amplify that culture, make it more effective. So you will start seeing impact, you'll start seeing results, you'll start seeing progress. But if you're seeing that your leaders is still operating on the old beliefs and assumptions of what used to be true, AI will amplify the dysfunction.
Let me ask a question here. How do I go uncover this safety deficit thing? And for me, how way I would do it is I would go around the leader and start talking to a few of their people and just ask questions around their experience with leadership. That would be my technique. I can ask the manager or the top level person, they're going to do a good job of telling me what I want to hear, but it's the perception of people that actually work for the leaders that really matter. What's been your experience? I mean, what am I really looking for as that leader to determine I've got a challenge in this group, the leaders in my organization that are not exhibiting or providing this safe environment? How do I find out that's even true?
hmm Well, the example that you gave is it's a great example, right? When it comes to involving your stakeholders, people who actually report to the leader, the peers who interact with that leader, that's where we can source the most accurate information, and that's where we can identify the gap between leaders' self-perception and how their leadership is actually being experienced by the people. That's a very powerful technique. There's one more diagnostic tool. I always like to start with ourselves. So if you're in a leadership role, ask yourself, when was the last time my employee challenged my opinion? When was the last time somebody shared a failure, an initiative, a deadline is not being met? And how did I respond in that moment? It will
Yeah,
tell
I
a
love
lot.
that. I love that. I've been working a little more with customers directly lately and working with a team that's kind of getting started on, really transforming their business and adopting, a lean mindset. So the analogy I liked is, from many years ago, it stuck with me. The culture thing at Toyota is when there's a defect, when the mistake happens, the management's reaction to that's crucial. And basically what happened, and they would say, oh, we have a treasure.
Mhm.
And the Western paradigm is, I gotta find who to punish and who to yell at for making that mistake. Whereas the Japanese mindset, at least the way I was understanding it, is no, we as leaders let our organization down because we haven't provided the training, the tools, the methods, the support our people need to get it right the first time. So it's on us as leaders when the mistake happens. It's really not on our people. Is that in line with what you're saying here?
Absolutely. Yes, because in a way, if you in leadership role, people are watching and they will follow suit. So what I'm seeing right now, there's oftentimes a big gap between the intention that the leader has and the actual impact that they're making. Because in manufacturing environment, you can say, we value innovation, we value collaboration, but first time the initiative fail or stumble, how do we respond in that moment will determine what are we communicating to our employees and what they will start actually performing, because they will give you the answers you want to hear, but what is the
Yeah.
actual truth?
Yeah, I like that a lot. And then the other thing you were going to get into, the third diagnostic, you call it the change velocity mismatch. What am I looking at for here? And how do I gauge we may have a challenge or a risk associated with that phenomena?
Hmm. I want everybody to think project management and how the cycle actually unfolds. So, when we think about implementation timelines, they're usually built around technology and process.
Mhm.
And there's one critical ingredient that is kind of being left out of the window, and it's actually human adoption cycle. So, in case of AI is moving at the speed of code. The faster we can code, the faster it moves. Humans move at the speed of trust. That's why psychological safety was our second key point and
Right.
ingredient. Here, when it comes to change management, we want to make sure we track not only our technology deployment timeline, but we need to diagnose, are our people psychologically, mentally actually ready? What is their relationship with this technology? Because if they fear this technology, they will play it safe. They will perform action, but they will ensure that this technology can never replace them. So the progress will always stall. That's why
Wow.
it's so important.
No, and I completely agree with that. And you talk about in the notes here, and I'm interested in having you unpack this one a little bit around mapping the gap between the go live actual target performance across your last three implementations. Could you kind of walk that out a little bit? How do you actually do that analysis?
Yes, yeah. So if we look at three or maybe four, whatever the technology, the tool, the process that you rolled out and told your people, this is a great tool, new initiative, go use it, get excited about it. And we think the mission is accomplished. It is not true. So we want to start tracking the official deployment day. From this day on, we're using this tool to when we start seeing return on investment and actually results that this tool is producing. Maybe now we can produce something much faster and more efficient way, maybe cheaper. Are we seeing actual results? And we want to measure the gap. And why do we want to track not just one, but maybe three or four or five, how many you have? We want to start seeing the trend. Because if your gap is increasing between the official deployment date and when people actually adopting and producing result, that's a red flag. And what is telling you your people are experiencing change fatigue. And if you think, oh, but I will just try a different tool, maybe this tool failed, they will fail the next tool even with the faster, because they're exhausted by change and they don't feel supported. They feel confused, and everything feels like next flavor of the month. And
Well,
that's where everything stalls.
all right. So Anna, you've done a really good job. I know I'm putting a little pressure on you here, but it's always important to me that, we have a way of putting a measurement or a gauge to this gapping
Yeah.
thing. So that's a really good diagnostic set. So let's pretend that I have, in fact, diagnosed and determined I have one or all three of these things at a challenge. Now I'm really interested in what do you do to close the gap on these kinds of challenges? What do you do? What's the action? What's your sage advice about what's next?
Mm. Great question. I will actually turn it to leadership because it is leadership responsibility. So we need to understand what we as leaders contributed to this failure. And it's not about blame, it's about what is our learning. Is it that we didn't communicate with enough clarity and people didn't understand the value of this tool and technology? Is it that we didn't provide right training and support? So people tried it, they felt overwhelmed, frustrated, and they abandoned it. Or is it even deeper? How do we relate to this tool and technology? Do we personally feel fear, resistance, or we feel like this technology is making our expertise obsolete? Because if that's true, we unintentionally creating culture that will amplify and multiply that problem.
Totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. What else should we do if we think we have gaps in those three areas you talked about? What else should we be doing?
Well, something that it is important to measure is psychological safety of your people, right?
All
So
right.
oftentimes we have cultural surveys. Well, it's very important that we do have questions that can help us identify, do our people feel safe to bring problems? Do our people feel safe to challenge their managers if they think we're heading wrong direction? And if we start looking at on a scale of 1 to 5 where we land, if we start landing at 3.5, that's not good. That's not good because what will happen here, we need excellence. Here, average or okay or mediocre is not enough because culture will eat technology for breakfast every time. So we
Every
need to
time,
drive
without
that.
fail. Without
Yes, without
fail.
fail.
Yeah. So I'll be interested in one of the methods I picked up many years ago, and it's a real simple method. Talk about the keys to sustainable change, right? And three big factors. It's the level of discomfort, it's the level of vision, and then the level of skills to be successful. So just bear with me. So I like to do a really quick exercise saying, do we have high discomfort with current state? Do we even have a desire for change, right? And I asked them to actually put a number on that between zero, between 1 and 100%, because if everybody loves the way it is today, they do not want to change. Don't mess with me. That's a really low number for discomfort. They're not looking for change. There's no burning platform. Whereas if everybody's all excited about it and they really need to see the existential threat to this organization, if we don't change, what do we do in management? We could give it a high number, but you give it a number, a percentage. And then we say, great. So how good is our vision? How well articulated is that? Could every single employee play back accurately their role and responsibility toward accomplishing the mission and the vision? Again, if they look at you funny, right, then you know you got a low number. If they can speak, these are the three key things we're trying to do, and here's what I'm doing to help, give that a high number. And then finally, do we give them the skills? Do they actually know how to implement these changes? Again, a 1 to 100%. And then you multiply the numbers and you find out you have an ugly chance of success. And
Mhm.
do you have a mechanism like that? Something in your book, maybe, in terms of some simple exercise that you can take a leadership team through to kind of baseline where we're at? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So in my
I mean, how
book,
would you how would you do that same thing? Yeah, how would you do the same thing?
I take it as a phased approach. And I always first put accountability, ownership, and responsibility on the ELT. I want to start with
Hmm.
executive leadership team every time, because if somebody points at the middle management and says, fix them, I'm like, that's not where we start. So there's always an evaluation and assessment of each leader at the helm to
Okay.
understand, are they ready mentally, emotionally? How do they feel about this technology? Do they understand this technology, its value and its risks? They also need to evaluate their industry, because there is basically an industry reality. It can be a little bit easier to get excited about AI in certain industries versus others. So if you're an engineer and you do coding, it's really hard to get excited right now. There will be a lot of angst, right? So we need to understand the reality of the context of our industry. Then we need to evaluate the real AI related risks that our people are perceiving right now, right? Will my job be eliminated? What I will do next? What are their anxieties and fears? We need to understand that next. That's the next layer. And only then, that's when we talk about that communication, right? Now we need to restore this visibility in how the work is changing. Right now, in real time, there is a lot of uncertainty, and help people see how this tool, this AI, can actually enable them to lead better, to be more effective, to create something that they were not able to create before. Because here's an interesting shift. If we talked last year, I would say AI is a great tool to make your current process more efficient. This is not where the future is heading. The future is, now that we have this tool, we have the opportunity to redesign and reimagine the whole business and workflow, which gives us opportunity.
Awesome stuff. So one of the things you had in the advice section here that I don't know if you've gotten to this one yet. I don't mean to get you off your flow. This notion of building timelines around humans and not the technology. Can you tell me more about that? I found that pretty interesting.
Yes, it's not either or. I see it as yes and. Because it's almost like in linear way of thinking, we focus on technology and process, and we follow the deployment timeline. And we think we have accomplished everything when the technology gets rolled out to people. Reality, that's where the real work begins. So actually having two parallel timelines. Yes, it's important to track process and the quality of the process, so we know, do people follow the process? Is maybe something wrong with the process that we need to tweak? But the parallel timeline is actual human adoption timeline, because we want to start tracking our people from the moment of awareness. Oh, I'm aware AI exists. What is it? Then a piece of education, right? They now have exposure to information of how to use that tool. Now, resistance, questions, confusion, we need to overcome that. Then we arrive into acceptance and buy-in. And only then we can develop their skills, and only then we can work with them. So with the repetition, those skills becomes a habit. So we don't have to micromanage. Now AI truly becomes part of the workplace and workforce. It's not something we're trying to bolt on and people reject. It's almost like our immunity system is rejecting something. It just
Right.
becomes part of who we are.
Very interesting. So my son is a programmer, advanced programmer, and he says, you get to 95% completion on the project, but then all the work you took to get there, you have another 100% to go, right, to get to the end. And I'm thinking part of that is what you're just talking about here, right? It's the whole U8 user acceptance testing, getting everything to the finish line, and headed for New York at the end of the month to work with the CIO and his team. And one of their struggles is, they get asked by the customers to provide a solution, and AI is going to be a piece of that. And they do the development, and they get down, and then when they try to hand it off, it's like, it kind of gets really gnarly. So that's what you're getting at here, right? Is how to map that part. Tell me more about how you do that.
Yeah. So the best way to do it, well, here's another diagnostic question everybody can ask themselves. When it comes to change management initiative, new technology deployments, whose responsibility is it to create that enablement process? Because if the answer is IT or our project management, great, you will fall in the bucket of 80% failed initiatives, guaranteed. There has to be a separate function, and that function is responsible for actual deployment and enablement of any process or technology. And that function needs to have understanding about the human side of change, right? The psychology, what needs to be measured, what needs to be addressed, psychological safety, what type of conversations we need to have in the background before we even introduce this technology. So people feel primed, they feel ready, they feel connected, and they feel like they're part of the change. Because here's interesting thing. I hear it a lot. People resist change. Our people resistant to change. I'm like, no.
They're called
People,
human beings. They're human beings. What do you expect?
yeah, right. But it gets even more interesting. People do not resist change. I always challenge that back. People resist becoming irrelevant. Because if you tell me the change is I'm getting a promotion, a new house, and I will have to work only 3 days a week, that's a great change. I'm excited. But if you're saying now we deploy an AI and people thinking my job will be replaced, that's what creates friction, not the actual change, but anticipation of what will that change mean for them personally. If we don't address that aspect, failure.
Lights out. Look out. You're in big trouble.
Exactly.
So, Anna, this has been really good. Before we move into wrap up, any other sage advice you might offer the audience to close those gaps we defined in the first part of the podcast?
Great
Anything else you
question.
may want to offer? Or just one last, here's, one last, one sentence, go do.
Yeah. I think something that I want everybody to take away with AI is the future, AI is the present, no denying it, like it, don't like it, it's here. And AI impact, it is tied to a few things. Whether your employees can see a credible place for themselves in the future that your company is creating. That's the key. If the answer is yes, you will deploy the technology effectively. If the answer is no, they will sabotage your mission.
Awesome. Good job. So, Anna, I'm guessing there's folks out there that would like to talk to with you more about this and maybe pick your brain a bit more. How does somebody get in touch with you to, have a deeper conversation?
Absolutely. So I have two websites. One is annabarnhill.com and another one is litterwire.com. That's where my book lives. That's where you can get a better understanding of the whole ecosystem around effective leadership and cultural transformation. And of course, LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I have a weekly newsletter. Sign up for it, and we can continue the conversation.
Awesome. Good job, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of MetaPod, and I certainly would hope you would like MetaPod, refer it to others you know, and take advantage of this great thought leadership that's been provided. And I'm always looking for inputs. I'm also always looking for great guests like Anna that can come and share some unique insights and what's changing in the marketplace that we need to be aware of. So with that, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for joining MetaPod. For requests on topics or to ask questions, you can connect with Ron Crabtree three ways: via email at metapod@metaexperts.com, via LinkedIn, or by calling him directly at 734-425-1455, extension 103. Lastly, if you love the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. We truly appreciate all your support.